Yo, what's going on, y'all? My name is Alex, and let's go over some overrated players this season. This includes some star players and some high quality role players who I just believe get either too much credit or I feel their impact isn't as high as people make it out to be. I would like to say and make it clear that just because I'm calling them overrated does not mean that I'm calling them bad. I actually think a lot of these people are very good or very great, but there's just something about them that I think not enough people realize. Before we continue on, if you do end up enjoying this video, make sure to like and sub. I'm trying to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the year, so it would mean a lot. Anyways, let's get started. So we're going to start off in the Eastern Conference, and the first player I believe is overrated is Bradley Beal of the Washington Wizards. 2 seasons ago, when Beal was averaging 31 points a game and struggling to lead the Wizards to the playoffs, Westbrook had to take over and help them to just get to the 8th seed. Once Westbrook left, Beal again struggled to lead his team to the playoffs, but the excuse was always that he had no help despite him not being as productive as the season prior. And here we are this season where the Wizards are just barely in the play-in spot, even with additional offensive pieces of Kyle Kuzma, Kristaps Porzingis, and Monte Morris. And although Beal has played a little bit better compared to last season, he still hasn't went back to how he was 2 years ago. Now, to play devil's advocate, Beal did miss a good amount of games last year where he missed more than half the season, and this year where he's missed 22 games. Fortunately, when he has played this year, the Wizards are actually 20-16, which would give them a win percentage of about 55%. This would place them around the Knicks and Heat at that 6 and 7 spot, but because of how much time he continues to miss, it continues to hurt the Wizards even with a better roster. The combination of unlucky health, his production not being as good as it previously was, and his ridiculous contract extension he got recently, which for some odd reason has a no trade clause on it, these are all reasons why I just find Beal to be a bit overrated, especially compared to other 2 guards around the league who have the same rank and same skill set as he does, but I just think that they do it at a better level and it also leads to more wins. The next player I want to discuss is DeMar DeRozan of the Chicago Bulls. I give DeRozan a lot of credit for last year. Being able to lead the Bulls team to the playoffs with Lonzo, Caruso, and LaVine struggling with injuries is something I didn't think he was going to be able to do. With that being said, the Bulls have not dealt with much unlucky injuries besides Lonzo, who was set to miss the rest of the regular season, but the Bulls are still sitting right outside the play-in spot, and that is really surprising since DeMar is still statistically comparable to last year, but I think his flaws in his games are really limiting how great the Bulls can be. What is DeRozan really good at? I ask that being very serious because he is not a good defender at all, whether that's one-on-one or off the ball. Although his playmaking has improved, it's still not the best, and it's the best the Bulls got, which I don't think is a good thing. He's not a good 3-point shooter, and although his scoring is good again this season, it's obvious that it just hasn't been enough to impact winning this year, which is why it surprised me that he made the All-Star team this year over guys like Harden, who are still good scorers while also providing some of the best passing and playmaking in the league as a second option to one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. Individually, DeRozan statistically is having a great season, but because the impact on winning isn't there and his flaws as a player are being seen more, I just don't think DeRozan is an all-star level player this season, which is why I think he's being a bit overrated. The last guy in the East I wanted to talk about was Terry Rozier of the Charlotte Hornets. Although Terry is nowhere near the caliber of player Beal or DeRozan are, he is still one of the best role players in the league due to his knack of scoring the ball, and despite the constant ankle injuries to LaMelo Ball this season, and the Hornets just not having much talent on the roster, I'm actually surprised Rozier isn't taking advantage of his opportunity to just go out there and get buckets. Sure, he's still averaging almost 22 points per game, but his efficiency is not good at all, only having a 52 true shooting percentage, which is far below league average, which is at about 57-58%. And outside of his scoring, there isn't much to be crazy about on the offensive end, but he has been a solid defender this season. The reason I believe he is a little bit overrated is that I just don't think he's having a good season, at least compared to last year, and around the trade deadline, there were talks of Terry being traded for multiple picks, and based on his play this year, I just don't think the value equals his play, and it's more on what he has been in hopes that he can improve on a better roster where the teams are game planning around him, which is something I can definitely understand. With how bad the Hornets are, it would be hard for a role player to carry the load and still do it effectively, but because he has been on the Hornets, I think his production has been a bit inflated, and if he did go to a contending team, his production again wouldn't be equal to the value the Hornets would be getting back in a trade. Moving on to the Western Conference, I want to talk about Jaren Jackson Jr. of the Memphis Grizzlies. Look, I understand how great of a defender JJJ is. He is arguably the defensive player of the year this season, and what he can contribute as a shooter and an offensive player is also great. However, why I think he's a bit overrated all has to do with his foul troubles. This is something that he struggled with his entire career. This season, he's averaging 3.4 fouls per game, which is just below his career average of 3.7. The reason why I think this makes him slightly overrated is because his trouble being disciplined on defense a lot of times can hinder how impactful his defense actually is, because it can keep him off the floor. During the regular season, he's been averaging about 27 minutes per game, which I think is a healthy amount considering how deep the Grizzlies are. However, when we get to the playoffs where teams condense playing time to about 8 players, his minutes per game don't move at all, and it has everything to do with his fouls. In the playoffs last year, JJJ averaged 4.4 fouls per game, again only in 27 minutes. I think this is unacceptable, and it's something I hope he can figure out this postseason, because there have just been too many times where JJJ isn't on the court in a close game, where the Grizzlies need to play defense and their best defender just isn't there. Next up, let's talk about Jordan Poole of the Golden State Warriors. Poole is still very young and figuring things out, but because of how mid the Warriors have been this season, it has made me deep dive into what may be the problem, and Poole's inconsistencies this season I feel have played a part. Sure, he's averaging 20 points per game, but his efficiency has noticeably dropped, and his decision making has peeked its ugly head out even more than usual. He's averaging 3.3 turnovers a game, and his decision making is more than just him throwing bad passes or mishandling the ball. His shot selection has also been a huge yikes this season, and the play that made Curry throw his mouthpiece and get ejected is the prime example of how bad Poole's decision making has been. I don't want to put full blame on Poole for why the Warriors have been inconsistent this year, but since Curry has missed a good portion of the season to injuries, Poole has had to step up, and in my opinion, he just hasn't done it, even though I feel like some people think he has. Lastly, let's talk about why I think Karl Anthony Towns of the Minnesota Timberwolves is overrated. I understand that Cat has only played 21 games this season, but in those games he played, he just didn't impress me at all. I know there's a huge change in how he has to play as well because of the addition of Rudy Gobert, but adding Gobert I think actually made his flaws even more apparent. Cat is just an awful defender, and I thought adding Gobert would hide him in a way, but because he has to play at the perimeter even more than he usually does, Cat actually looked lost a lot more often on who he needed to guard whenever a pick was set, and the players he has to guard as well are just faster than the centers he had to guard last year, so that's a huge change that he's had to deal with. Another change I don't think he's done a good job settling into is his playmaking. Because Gobert has been in the paint, Cat has had to operate even more on the perimeter than usual, and when he's been asked to make the right read and a good pass after driving by a player trying to contest a 3, he just wasn't doing a great job in my opinion. Sure, he has 5 assists a game, but those numbers don't equal good playmaking or passing. Passes would just be not pinpoint, and it would make it harder to get open shots since those bad passes allowed defenders to recover. On top of this, his shooting also took a huge dip down, but I will somewhat excuse it since this hasn't been a problem his entire career. The Timberwolves throughout the season have actually looked a lot better this season since Cat has been gone due to injury, and that's not to say I think Cat should be traded and Gobert is better, but if Cat is going to be able to make a fit between him and Gobert work, he is just going to have to be more than just an elite shooting big man. Well, those are my 6 overrated players from this NBA season. Let me know down below what y'all think. Do you think I missed someone? Do you disagree with who I have? If you enjoyed, make sure to like and sub. Check out my socials down below in the description. You can check out this video somewhere on the screen where I go over Westbrook joining the Clippers and why I think this is his last chance to prove people wrong. I also did 6 underrated players, so if you're interested in that, go check that out as well. Anyways, see you on the next one. Peace out.